Stop scrolling and start listening. If you've reached a plateau in your English journey, it's because you've stopped feeling the rhythm of the language. Today, we aren't just reading, we're stepping into the old quarter of a living city to master the flow, the stress, and the melody of B2 level English. This is 1,500 words of continuous immersive storytelling designed to bridge the gap between studying a language and actually living it. Clear your mind, find your breath, and let's begin shadowing. Finding a perfect balance between comfort and growth is the ultimate goal when you are learning a new foreign language. At the B2 level, you stand at a fascinating crossroads where the mechanics of grammar begin to fade into background. This allows the true art of storytelling and complex thought to take center stage for every dedicated and curious student. To practice your shadowing effectively, you need a narrative that flows naturally, mirroring the way that native speakers connect ideas. You must avoid the interruption of rigid bullet points or structural breaks to maintain the rhythm of your spoken practice. The morning mist clung to the glass towers of the city like a soft gray blanket, blurring the sharp edges. The skyscrapers usually dominated the skyline with their uncompromising steel and light during the brightest hours of the warm day. Elias stood at the corner of 5th and Main, watching the rhythmic pulse of the busy morning commute each day. This was a sight he had witnessed 1,000 times, yet one that never failed to spark quiet, deep curiosity. People moved with a focused intensity, their footsteps creating a low-level hum against the pavement as they walked to work. Everyone seemed locked into a predetermined orbit of work, coffee, and digital notifications that governed their busy, modern lives today. He often wondered if anyone else noticed the small anomalies in the urban landscape during their long and frantic travels. He saw the way a single wildflower could crack through a slab of reinforced concrete in the middle of town. The shadows of the old clock tower stretched across the plaza like long, thin fingers reaching for a distant, forgotten past. As he began to walk, he felt the familiar cadence of the city's breath, a mixture of many different sounds. He heard distant sirens, the hiss of pneumatic bus doors, and the indistinct murmur of countless conversations in many languages. This was the environment where he felt most alive, yet today he was headed somewhere different and quite very mysterious. He moved away from the polished marble lobbies and into the heart of the old quarter to find his way. This was a place where the architecture told stories of a time before the great modernization had changed the world. The transition between the two worlds was subtle at first, marked only by a change in the texture of the ground. Smooth asphalt gave way to weathered cobblestones beneath his feet as he entered the older part of the quiet city. Here, the buildings were shorter and more intimate, their brick facades covered in a thick green tapestry of ancient ivy. The plants had spent decades claiming the walls as their own, while the city grew taller around the small streets. He adjusted his pace, slowing down to match the slower tempo of this neighborhood while he looked at the sights. He consciously focused on the way the air felt cooler and smelled faintly of damp earth and aromatic wood smoke nearby. He stopped in front of a narrow doorway that looked as though it hadn't been opened in many long, weary years. Blue paint was peeling away in long, curled strips to reveal the silvered timber underneath the weathered and old surface. This was the entrance to the archive he had heard so much about during his research into the local history. It was a repository of maps, letters, and photographs that documented the city's evolution from a small, local trading post. Pushing the door open, he was greeted by the heavy, sweet scent of aging paper and the silence of wood-scented rooms. The archivist, a woman whose eyes held the sharp brightness of someone who solved puzzles, looked up from her ledger. She nodded slowly, acknowledging his presence without breaking the stillness of the space as he entered the quiet, dim room. Elias explained his mission. He wasn't looking for grand historical events or the lives of famous and powerful figures. He wanted the small, everyday details that defined the lives of ordinary citizens a full century ago in this place. He spent hours lost in the stacks, his fingers tracing the elegant looping calligraphy of old personal diary entries today. His eyes scanned the faded borders of hand-drawn maps that showed streets that no longer existed in the modern world. He found a letter written by a young woman named Clara in 1912, describing the excitement of first electric lights. Her words were filled with a sense of wonder that felt strangely relatable despite the passage of so much time. She wrote about how the light chased away the deep shadows, transforming the street into a stage for the neighbors. As Elias read her words, he realized that technology and architecture might change at a very dizzying and fast pace. However, the fundamental human desire for connection and the need to find beauty in our surroundings always remained constant. Leaving the archive as the sun began its slow descent, Elias found himself looking at the city with fresh eyes. The modern glass buildings didn't seem quite so cold anymore, but rather like vessels holding thousands of individual human stories. He walked toward the riverside park, where the water reflected the orange and purple hues of the beautiful warm sunset. The water created a shimmering path that seemed to lead toward the edge of the world in the distance now. Families were picnicking on the grass, while children were chasing seagulls with joyous abandonment near the moving blue river water. Elderly couples sat on wooden benches, watching the world go by with the patient grace of those who saw seasons. The contrast between the frantic energy of the morning and the peaceful reflection of the evening was a great reminder. The city was both a machine of productivity and a sanctuary for the soul during the quiet hours of night. He sat down on a stone wall, listening to the water lap against the embankment, a rhythmic and hypnotic sound. He thought about the concept of urban memory and how a city is more than just a collection of structures. It is a living, breathing entity that remembers everything through the layers of its construction and the echoes of people. Every renovation, every new park, and every demolished building left a ghost of itself behind for the future to see. He felt a deep sense of gratitude for being part of this ongoing narrative, a tiny thread of fabric. The challenge was to remain observant and never let the routine of daily life blind him to the subtle magic. As the first stars began to pierce through the twilight, the city started to glow with a different kind of energy. Neon signs flickered to life, casting vibrant streaks of crimson across the wet pavement as the light began to fade. Windows of the apartments above began to light up one by one, like a Morse code of private domestic life. Elias stood up and rejoined the flow of people, but his movements were different now as he walked along them. He was no longer just a commuter moving from point A to point B, but a witness to the silent drama. He noticed the sound of a violin playing from an open window several stories up in the dark evening air. He saw a group of teenagers laughing as they shared a box of hot donuts in the chilly night air. These were the moments that mattered, the small, unscripted interactions that gave the city its strong and vibrant heartbeat today. He eventually reached his own apartment, a modest space filled with books and plants that served as his personal refuge. From his balcony, he could see the entire span of the bridge, its lights reflecting in the dark, cold river. He thought about the shadow he had cast on the streets today and how it had mingled with many others. The act of shadowing a language was very much like walking through a city and following a path for yourself. Eventually, you begin to understand the logic of the layout, and you start to find your own unique way. You move from being a stranger to a resident who knows which alleys lead to the best and secret views. He closed his eyes and let the sounds of the night wash over him, practicing the sentences he heard today. He was not just learning words, he was learning a way of being and expressing the nuances of his life. The city continued to hum outside his window, a never-ending symphony of motion and light as he went to sleep. The journey of mastering a language was a marathon that rewarded the patient and curious with a true belonging. The cycle of the city continued as the moon reached its zenith, casting a silver glow over the silent rooftops. Elias knew that when he woke up, he would once more be a part of the grand and beautiful experiment.
Consistency is the only secret to fluency.
By finishing this passage, you've given your brain the sustained workout it needs to recognize natural English structures. If you found certain sections difficult, go back and shadow them one more time. The more you repeat these complex rhythms, the more they become yours. Don't forget to like this video if it helped your practice, and subscribe for more long-form immersion. Keep practicing, and I'll see you in the next one.